Welcome to the WakeUp Protocol. I'm your host, Nadja Haldimann, and together we're having life-changing conversations with real people about spiritual awakening and the transformations that follow. Along the way, we're mapping the messy path of awakening so you can go further, faster, and feel a little less alone in your personal growth. For today's episode of the WakeUp Protocol, I'm joined by two deeply heart-centered humans, Susan Powell and Jay Darling. Susan is a holistic health educator and elder supporting indigenous communities in healing. Jay is a musician and self-described possibilitarian who uses sound, movement, and mirth to foster connection. Together, they've created a beautiful partnership in life, in love, and in how they guide others through conscious relationships and embodied communication. We talk about discernment, spiritual awakening, and self-trust, the quiet wisdom of nature, the power of truly listening, and how healing happens through presence, not striving. They also share tender insights from their own relationship, how they've built a life rooted in trust, respect, humor, and care. It's the kind of conversation that settles your nervous system and gently opens the door to deeper truth. I hope you feel as nourished by it as I did.
I was lying there in my little trailer, laughing at myself inside my head, just going, well, I did it again. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was this voice, and it was in surround sound in my little tiny trailer. And it was this voice of this elder. And I could almost visualize him. He was quite elderly, with long, beautiful braids. But it's not like he appeared as a vision in front of my face or even in my mind's eye, but it was like an impression. And this voice said, "That's enough." Like with all the authority and power in the world, that's enough.
Susan, Jay, welcome to the WakeUp Protocol.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Nadja.
I'm curious, what's lighting you up right now in the world and in your heart? And let's start with Susan first.
I'd have to say, for me, every new day that dawns really does light me up. And it's lighting up of the possibilities that are in the world. Right now, there's a lot of tumult going on, and it's easy to get wrapped up in that. But I find that keeping my focus on the possibilities of each new day and all the good that I see in the world is very lightening.
Beautiful. Thank you, Susan. Just focusing on what's going well in the world and holding that positive energy. And how about you, Jay?
Yeah, definitely along those lines. What's lighting me up is the season that we're in, the season of summer and the long days and the beauty of the world and all of its birds and colors and flowers and green things growing and the waters being more calm out on the bay when I go swim out there and all the things that really pull me out of myself into the world. Yeah,
just really focusing on what's out there and what's beautiful and what's in nature and what's real. That's really what I'm hearing, is focusing on what's real.
Yeah, what's real versus what is artificial. We're getting a lot better at discernment at the
and what's being manufactured.
Yeah.
There's a lot of manufactured things being put into our realities, and that is not real.
Yeah, with AI these days, we don't really know what's real anymore unless we can touch it and smell it and feel it.
Yeah, it's taking more and more discernment from us, and that requires energy and focus and a willingness to stay curious rather than just, oh yeah, my friend told me this and it's got to be true, or I saw this there and it's no, and just keep duplicating it and passing it on. Now it's more in a time of like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to check that out a little bit more, or I'm going to listen to my heart a little bit more deeply, or I'm going to look into my friends or my beloved's eyes and check out what's real over there. Hey, how are you doing? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, discernment is something that often comes up in conversations with people. If you were to talk to someone and help them understand what discernment is and how to access that, how would you explain that?
Yeah, the essence of skepticism is to be open to something being true and not being true. And so to have that skeptical, curious, genuinely, I don't know. And so I'm going to take some time to figure out if I need to get more quiet within myself and get more attuned to my own awareness and my own ability to use my senses. And there's way more than 5 senses from my point of view. And then is it more an external discernment, and I'm going to go check out different places that I know, whether it's a 1980s encyclopedia, or do I have places that I know online that are safe and going to present actual facts? How am I going to do that? What are my sources?
For me, it's important to recognize that I have biases. And that somebody can say something that aligns with my bias. And then I want to glom onto it because it makes me feel better that somebody's confirming what I think is already true. And that if I don't take the time to check myself, my baseline is always self-care. How am I caring for myself? All of the parts of myself so that I can be in a better state of awareness, that when that little voice that kind of comes in and somebody's telling me something that I want to hear or that I already believe in, and then I get excited inside. It's like, see, I knew I was right. And then that little voice pipes up and says, are you sure? That I can hear that voice. Otherwise, there's a lot of loud in the world these days. And if we're not finding our ways to chill out on all the levels, then we're not going to be able to hear those quiet voices that tell us the truth from our heart and the times that we're being.
Yeah, bias is such a huge one. And confirmation bias is a word that's becoming really popular lately. And the more we look for things on the internet, the more the algorithm pushes that to us. And AI is doing the same things these days. It starts reaffirming what we want it to say because it's a model based on probability, and it just learns from what we want and it gives us more of that. So you say, Susan, that you have an inner voice. And I'm curious, how did you learn to listen to that voice?
It's been a long journey, and it continues to be a process. I can't claim that I have it nailed 100%. I came from a broken family, as it were, and then I ended up living with a stranger who was my grandmother, but someone whom I'd never met. And in that world, I had to become a Catholic. And then I always liked the love stuff in Catholicism, what they talked about in church, but all the other stuff was like Charlie Brown's adults in the Charlie Brown shows. It was like, wah, 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 wah. It just really didn't land with me. And so then, as a young teenager, I started reading books that I could find about different ways, like the Hindu philosophies and Buddhism and Confucius and the Tao Te Ching. And they all talked about, in some manner, about being quiet. And even in the Bible, it talked about be still, be still. And so for me, nature was a huge part of that. And even though I lived in a small city, there was a lot of nature that I could connect with. And so just being in nature, she's a beautiful mirror to each of us. And she reflects back that beauty and that silence. And I'm Lakota on my mother's side, North American indigenous person. And I was disconnected from that side of my family, but what we are is what we are. And for me, nature was a way to connect with that side of my lineage. And she's always speaking with us and reflecting and teaching us things. And I spent as much time as I could outside, and typically by myself. And then as I became a young adult, I did more of that, and I practiced meditations, and I did these things. And I always felt like I failed miserably, but at least the practice of it led me in a good direction. And so I have found over the years that just going and being quiet in nature, and if I can't be in nature myself, then I imagine that I'm in nature. And that helps me to access the quieter aspect of myself.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. Really allowing nature to be the teacher for you to help you find or access that inner voice, and then learning through the wisdom of nature. And I assume through the wisdom of some of the Native American teachings as well, that is coming down from your mother's lineage.
Yes. Even though I wasn't connected to my mother's lineage at all, I did find people along the way. And when you look at where indigenous people live, they live in and with nature.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense that we would, find so much nurturing in nature ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we're all indigenous to Mother Earth,
Absolutely. And I can really sense it in the way you talk and hold yourself. I feel like my whole nervous system is relaxing when I just listen to you. I've known you for a bit now, both of you, and I've heard you at events speak as well. And every time you speak, there's just this beautiful wisdom, probably from nature, channeling through you, and it really helps. So thank you for stepping into that and for embodying that and for modeling that for other people to see that it's possible. Appreciate it. I'm very interested in spiritual awakening. So many people experience it in so many different ways. And before we jump into stories about how it happened to you, and again, it can be small, it can be big, it can be slow, it can be fast. It's so different from person to person. But what I'm really curious about is if you had to define spiritual awakening, what would you say?
I would say that it's a waking up to the connection of ourselves to the relationships of others, of the universe, and to the patterns that show up in so many different ways, whether it's the quality of waves and how there's really intense, challenging moments in my life, or I'm having to swim really hard and the water's crashing over me and I'm choking and I'm coughing. And then I get to the backside of the wave and there's going to be a settling and there's going to be a moment where things get a little bit easier. And so learning to trust those patterns and to see that, there's going to be a front side and there's going to be a backside of the wave. Or another pattern that I really love is spirals, and having seen myself in different ways of my life. Oh, now I've tried this one time and now I'm trying it a second time and I'm out at a wider round of the spiral, or I'm caught in a thought spiral and it's a downward spiral. How do I pull myself out of those? I believe that having the awareness and the trust in those patterns and how I'm a part of something much, much bigger. And so my web that I'm a part of is what gives me that sense that there's something much bigger than this and I'm a part of it, and that I'm awake to that. Is how I would define that.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. And I really love you talking about patterns. I always map things to pattern myself. It's just how my brain works. It's something I'm already familiar with. And then it's like, okay, it's a metaphor for that. So both the waves and the spiral are really interesting. I've thought of the spiral many times because this podcast is called the WakeUp Protocol. And in general, a protocol is a step-by-step process to get from point A to point B. And yet the awakening is not linear.
It's pretty messy. It's pretty messy.
And I had this conversation with a friend, and she got a little triggered by the word protocol because she said that's very much coming from the ego because it means that you have to achieve something. And I said, I find it very similar to astrology, where it's a circle from the top, but a spiral from the side. If you look at a spiral from the top, it's a circle, right? And let's say it's a clock. It has a 12 o'clock, a 1 o'clock, and it comes back to a 12. So in a sense, it's linear in that way too. But then when you turn it over to the side, you see it's a spiral. So as you're going through one cycle and you come back, you start over and over and over again. And it's totally nonlinear. And I really like the idea of the waves too, because there can be very gentle waves and very wild waves, and you can surf a wave and you can get pulled under the water by a wave. And waves are water, and water is, astrologically speaking, the emotional state of humans. So yeah, going through these various emotional states of the waters. It's a beautiful definition. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, do you want to add something to that as well?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I did a lot of reading as a young teenager, and I would get inspired by reading. So, for instance, one of the books I read was The Autobiography of a Yogi. One of the things I loved about that book was in the Catholic Church, there was a lot of talk about miracles way back when. But Jesus said that when we got ourselves together and realized who we really were, that we would be able to do even greater things than what he did. And I wanted to find out about that stuff. And so in the Autobiography of a Yogi, he talks about Christ consciousness and about the ability to do miracles. And then there was also the thing, as I understood it in the Hindu way, was about becoming, purifying oneself and becoming more and more holy. And so I wanted to aspire to that, but I never really felt like I would be able to, But then when I started in my early 20s connecting with North American indigenous people and learning the ways of the people, I learned in Lakota, the highest thing that one can aspire to being is a humble, ordinary human. And for me, the juxtaposition of going beyond these mortal bodies and fasting and purifying and clearing yourself out so that you're not held down to this horrible planet that's so awful that you want to escape it. Yes, we purify ourselves and we go on vision fasts and we do ceremonies, but we do it for the people. We do it to uplift everybody and help everybody. And so for me, it wasn't like a moment of awakening around that, but it was a coming to kind of like the sun comes. It's like this slowly lightening thing where it's like became more and more clear that I didn't have to work on getting out of here to be worthy, but that to be here and to be the best Susan that I could be was worthy. And so by and by, I just set aside this thing of like, well, I have to be purer and holier and betterer so that I can do miracles and things. And I have been able to assist people in their journey through the things that I've learned and what I can share. And it's not walking on water yet, but that's okay. And that's the thing too, is like if we aim for something, but not in a pushy way. I mean, for me, it was a lot of shame-driven stuff, so I've got to do better and be better and get better so that I can show that I'm not a horrible person. And then coming around to going, well, I'm just the best Susan I can be. And every day I do my best to just be me and be the best me that I can. And not in a over or under way, but just that, yes, I've been given gifts, and what I've been given I can use in the world, both for my benefit or for my people close to me, and hopefully for the larger scheme of the community.
It deeply resonates with me, what you're sharing, Susan, because we're in this world of constant competition and striving for the next level to unlock. Just the way the society is built these days, especially in the United States where we live, and just tapping into something that's not about competition, but that's about just living a humble life and making the best of that. I just spent a couple of weeks in Switzerland, and I brought some American friends with me, and they all noticed how there was a different energy. It wasn't that hustle culture where everybody's so stressed out. People were very hardworking and everything was really dialed in, but there was just a sense of calmness that they hadn't really seen in the United States lately. And I don't know if I would have noticed it if they hadn't pointed it out, because I'm familiar with both cultures, but I noticed the contrast. And coming back, I notice when I'm in a store how people are just wanting to just get through it and out and next to the next thing, rather than just being more in that present moment and just appreciating life for all it is, rather than always trying to unlock that next level.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because when you think about how popular games are, like online gaming, and the people are addicted to it and, stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning in a game when they have to go to work at 7 or something. It's an interesting phenomenon.
And they're all incentive and reward based, and get to your new level, and now you've unlocked a new challenge, and now
push.
Yeah, thank you. I am curious. Let's start with you, Susan. Have you ever had a pivotal moment where you experienced a spiritual awakening?
I've had many little moments over the way. I've always wanted to have that big gobsmacking one that just, the heavens open up and the light pours down and all like that. But I haven't had anything like that so far. But I've had many moments, often in nature and in ceremony. And it's like they're just these little private moments for me where the universe is kind of tickling me or pinching my cheek or something, like, here you go, granddaughter, here's a little thing to help you keep going. And that's the thing in my life, because there are many times in the far distant past where I just didn't want to be here and I wanted to give up, but then there would always be something there. Just go, okay, keep going, keep going, keep going. And
so how did that talk to you? Is there any specific one you want to point out?
Well, they're different ones, and many of them are in your own head. If you have a thought that just comes out of nowhere and it appears to you, and it's not necessarily in your voice, but it's not necessarily a different voice. It's just there. So I've had that happen. And then one time, and this is kind of funny, but it is a really important one for me. After I left home, I had a baby, and then I gave him up for adoption because I was just too young and didn't really even know how I was going to take care of myself. And I was living down in Key West, Florida, but on the next island up. And I had been there originally with my aunt and her husband. And they went out drinking pretty much every day. And so I would go out drinking with them because I had kind of a postpartum depression and feeling bad about giving up my baby, but not really, I didn't get counseling or anything. That just wasn't part of my universe at the time. And so I would go out and drink, and everybody there was just hard drinking people. And because I was young and cute, I ordered any kind of a drink. The bartender would give me a double, which I didn't find out until later, but still managed to be able to drive myself home. It wasn't far. And so one morning I woke up and I had such a headache. It was like a herd of elephants were tap dancing on my head, then squeezing my head and then tapping and squeezing. It was horrible. But I was lying there in my little trailer, laughing at myself inside my head, just going, well, I did it again. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was this voice, and it was in surround sound in my little tiny room, in my little tiny trailer. And it was this voice of this elder. And I could almost visualize him. He was quite elderly with long, beautiful braids. But it's not like he appeared as a vision in front of my face or even in my mind's eye, but it was like an impression. And this voice said, "That's enough." Like with all the authority and power in the world, that's enough. I started laughing and thinking, oh my Lord, now I'm hallucinating. And it was like, what? But then it was like he shook his head and he said, no, that's enough. And so I said, okay. And I just stopped. I stopped going out drinking all the time.
Wow.
I never drank to escape pain or anything like that. And then years later, I was reading Michio Kushi's book about macrobiotics. And at the back end of it, there's a thing, and he shows different kinds of food, sugary things, and then alcohol. And it says something like, it's one thing if you're at a party and you're celebrating somebody's birthday or a wedding, and you have a slice of this celebratory food, or you raise a glass to toast somebody. And then I heard another thing of like, it's one thing if you're having it to help you remember a situation that's a happy moment, or you're just drinking to try to forget.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized that because also in North American indigenous world, alcohol is seen as an evil and nobody should ever touch it. And I don't feel quite so strongly that way. I have been able to go for years and years. And then if I have a drink, but if I'm going to be any kind of ceremony, then there's no alcohol for a long time, just to be prepared for that. But that awakening of, yeah, you don't need to do that anymore. It surprises and delights me to this day that I had that moment.
Yeah. Wow, Susan, what a profound experience and awakening you went through at such a young age, having to give up your baby for adoption and not getting the support you needed at the time, and then defaulting to alcohol, which was modeled by your family. And then that vivid vision of an elder giving you such a clear no. But in a way you were able to receive it with joy and laughter. What a powerful pivot in your life, and what a blessing that this message landed so clearly with you. Jay, do you have a pivotal moment of awakening that you would like to share with us?
I've had some little moments along the way that have really left me curious. If I'm living inside my little bubble and then all of a sudden my head pops outside of the bubble and says, oh, wow, okay. Another moment was when I went backpacking with a girlfriend and we had to cross this large river right out of the parking lot. And then we hiked for 3 days and it was raining the whole time. And when we came back to recross the river, it was 6 or 12 inches higher and much faster. And right out in the middle, my girlfriend first got picked up off of her feet and I'm holding on to her in the river. And,
oh, wow.
And I just couldn't hold on to her and myself anymore. And I just let go. And there was this moment. It was so brief, but all of a sudden I was like connected to all the waters of the world. And I expanded out into this huge, vast oceanic awareness of all the waters of everywhere. And I'm a part of that right now. And then boom, I dropped back into my body. And I go, okay, we got to get across this river now and push to get across the raging torrent there. And I got to the other side and I was laughing ecstatically. I was so high and she's freaking out and she'd been bruised heavily and she's much smaller than me. And God, I felt bad about it after the fact, but I was just so high and laughing out loud. That was a powerful moment. And I've had a bunch of others on top of a mountain in the Himalayas, and I felt all the sadness of the world. It was this really intense, empathic, expansive awareness of how big the sadness was in the world. And I've had other moments when my children were born. It was profound. I can't even quite explain what that was like.
So what I'm hearing is that there's been a really pivotal, intense moment and really feeling and experiencing all of it and being in that personal power and not attached to stories from the past or the future, but just channeling and feeling everything that's coming through. Feel all those emotions and coming back to life. Am I hearing that right?
It was more like all of a sudden I got popped from myself out into something way bigger, way beyond, and I hadn't been prepared for it. It wasn't something that I was actively focusing on. It's just something opened up and I expanded much larger than myself, whether I'm all part of the rivers of the world or I'm a part of the pain of the universe. Now I'm subsumed into the greater vastness of the universe.
So what do you think happened in that moment? Where did you go? Who did you become?
I became much bigger than just Jay.
Mm-hmm.
I was connected with far more than I was accustomed to.
Beautiful. So having experienced that, what has changed in your life after that? And I would like to start with you, Jay.
Well, there was another moment where I was walking across a field and there's this other person. I've never met them before, and they're walking across the field towards me, and there's nobody else in this field, even though we're in the middle of it. It was a festival weekend, but everybody else was maybe resting up for the big Saturday night woohoo. And we were walking towards each other, and we both saw each other. We were walking in opposite directions across this field, and we slowly reoriented ourselves, and our smiles were getting bigger and bigger, and we walked closer and closer. We walked right up to each other, and then we had this sweet little smooch and a hug and greeted each other in our fullness of our being, and then
With no words.
no words.
Wow. What an incredible experience.
Yeah. And then he kept going his way and I kept going to where I was going. And I was there as a volunteer to help. And I looked around and I never saw him again for the rest of the weekend. And Monday, I was there to help with the cleanup. And suddenly then he was there. He had a van and he was gathering things. And there were a bunch of people around him saying goodbye from the weekend. And he just said, "Oh, well, I'm having some friends over for dinner. Do you want to come?" And so that's how we started spending time together and got each other's names and digits and all the things.
Wow. It almost sounds like it was like a recognizing of your souls in that moment.
Yes. And that was almost 11 years ago. And we've been living together for, 9.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was on the road and traveling and going between Montana and Oregon and British Columbia and visiting my dad, who was still alive at the time, on the coast of Washington. And so every time I was coming this way, I'd reach out to Jay and, "Hey, I'm going to be in town these days. Any chance we can visit?" And so that's what happened. He had a full schedule, but I could manage to get myself penciled in here and there, which was nice. And we both had been in relationships before, and he had said, "Well, I'm just recently out of a relationship, so I'm not looking for a girlfriend." And I said, "Well, I don't know what to call what I'm looking for. I just know that what I've created in the past hasn't worked for me. So why don't we just go along and see how it goes?" And so we did that. And some of our previous relationships weren't that nurturing. And so listening to him, I understood some things that we'd have to really be conscious in our disagreements so we wouldn't trigger each other around things. And so if I had something that was bothering me, I would wait until I could sense that he had some space in his world. Because again, he had lots and still does have lots going on. But I'd say, "Hey, is now a good time to have a chat?" And he'd say yes or no. And the first thing I'd always say is, "Well, you're not wrong. And I'm having this experience about what happened or what was said or not said, or, whatever my expectations were not being met." And then he has studied nonviolent communication, so then he could listen openly and then reflect back to me what he thought he heard. And then I could clarify whether that was what I meant or not. And then we could suss things out. And then we'd get through that and say, "Well, do you want to make dinner or go for a walk?" or whatever. It was maybe the longest talk we had to have. It was under an hour. Yeah, maybe more like half an hour. But in any case, like no yelling or calling each other names or profanity or anything harsh. Just a real tenderness and care for each other's being and emotional welfare and just so much ease. And so from the moment that something might occur that I didn't appreciate, If it was bothering me, then I'd say, well, it's on me to deal with myself, what's going on with me. And then I would do my inner work. And then when I could approach him, I didn't have a bunch of energy coming at him. I could just be fairly neutral. And so he didn't have to resist me energetically because I wasn't pushing on him. He could just be, and I have a hunch that it made him feel more ease with being present with me. And then we could get to what was really going on the best way that we could and move forward. And so in all these years, we've never had a fight.
What a beautiful story of how you met and then saw each other and decided to do relationship in a more conscious way with all the tools that you already had at that point in your life. And what kind of lessons have you learned that you want to share with this audience that they can take away from your experience?
Yeah, it's been this amazing recognition of both of us that we can be together, we can live together, we can work together, we can raise children from a previous relationship, we can go through a pandemic together, we can have all these things, these great challenges, but we can have this level of accountability to ourselves and to each other where we can have enough pause and say, okay, well, I'm charged about this right now, so it's not a good time to talk about it. I'm going to be able to do my homework and figure out, okay, well, this is what worked for me. This is what didn't work for me. This is how I might have contributed to making that happen. And now I'm going to go have that conversation with Susan.
Yeah. Yeah. The inner work is so important, and space. We really give each other space. I was raised by my grandmother, as I mentioned before, and she was very particular. And if I didn't do some household chore to her standards, I get to do it again and again and again until I got it right. And I was in school with nuns, and they were very exacting. And then I became a student of classical Russian ballet, and that is very exacting. And I have Virgo rising. And so there's things that I like to be a certain way. And when I first moved in to live with Jay after a year and a bit, one of the things was, you know how on your stove, there's the oven handle, and most people put their kitchen towel over the oven handle. Well, I use it, and then I spread it back out so it has a chance to dry. And then he would use it and scrumple it all up and shove it back in there. I would come in the kitchen and open it up. And even if I went out and like 10 minutes later, I came back, it was done again. And so instead of making it be something that I could be upset about, I would just go, oh, Jay was here. And then I would just open it up and put it down. So I didn't have to make it big thing. There was like this horrible affront to, Virgo goddesses everywhere, that how could this horrible person do this horrible thing? It was just like, oh, Jay was here. And then I could laugh about it, and just to be spacious. We talk about that a lot. And we're together as much as we can be, but we have work and we have friends, and he goes off and, has a weekend with his guy friends, or I go off and I do visit my friends in Vancouver, British Columbia. And it's fun to miss each other a little bit, but I don't feel like I have to be with him all the time. And there's so much trust there that I'm not thinking, oh, he says he's going off on a weekend with these guys, but how do I know that maybe he's got some hottie down in Oregon he's going to go visit or something? And it's like that never crosses my mind. There's just so much trust and safety. We've really cultivated that in our relationship, and we've shown up for each other. I had a car collision last fall, and he really had to step in and do a bunch of extra things to help me. But then this weekend, he was working so diligently to support his mom. And last night we got home and he was like tired. And I just said, here, sit down and I'll make dinner and I'll clean up and I'll do all the things. And we tag team each other all the time. Like I'm a little weaker in one area, he's a little stronger in that area, and vice versa. And we just look out for each other like we like each other or something.
We've recognized that bean counting doesn't really help anybody. It had that in prior relationships, and that's definitely a downward spiral.
Yeah. Well, it really sounds like you figured out how to build a relationship based on respect and trust. And that's so important and something that is very difficult to do.
Yeah. It's a pleasure.
And the spaciousness, again, to reiterate that. Respect and the care and the spaciousness.
Susan, you're a holistic health educator working with indigenous communities. And Jay, you're passionate about music and dance and collaborating with Susan with healing relationships. How can people find you?
Well, I don't currently have a website, but I have an email that will be listed in the podcast. That'll be easy. And we live in Bellingham, Washington. So that's one way.
Yeah. We teach workshops at local festivals and healing gatherings and ceremonies and all kinds of things like that.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes as well so people can find you. Thank you. And just before we end, I have a question for both of you. And let's start with you, Jay, first, and then Susan. If you could go back in time and give a message to a younger version of you, what would you tell him?
I would go back and I would say, find your practice. Find your thing that you're going to do that will help to keep you stable and anchored. I have tried many things over my lifetime, and I'm grateful that I finally found one that really pulls me to it. For me, it's cold water swimming and other things that I do as a part of it on the front and the back side. Let's say until you find your thing that's really going to give you that steadying in your mind and in your body and in your soul, that will be that anchor. Yeah, to really find that as early as you can. It changes over time. Try all the things. Try running, try yoga, try qigong, try meditation, try working out at the gym. Find your whatever, your singing group, your dance group, whatever it is. Find your thing that's going to be the anchor.
Thank you. And Susan, what would you tell to a younger version of you?
In all honesty, the way my life has worked out is so beautiful. And I somehow managed to give myself that message when I was little. I never gave up and I never gave in and I never quit, even though there were moments that I wanted to many times along the way. But I would say that to the younger Susan, go get a financial advisor that you really trust and learn about the money game. It's not so much for so that my self is covered, but in my being, I feel myself to be a philanthropist. But I don't have millions of dollars with which to be a philanthropist. And I would really like to do that. And nobody in my family knew about money. And I didn't have a mentor about that. And so I would say, get yourself a mentor and learn those things and really, because it's a big problem also in what we call Indian country amongst my people. It's like people don't really know about that, and it undermines people's wellness in many, many ways.
Yeah, really tapping into that abundance thinking and not looking at money as a way to boost your ego, but to become a philanthropist, which is so powerful. A lot of people say money is the source of all evil, but what amazing change you can make if you have it. I always think of money as a magic wand. If we have it, we get to choose how to use it and what to create in the world. So thank you for that message. And I think it is a very spiritual message too, when used in the right way. Susan, Jay, it was such a pleasure having this conversation with you. Your grounded calmness, it helped settle my nervous system. And I feel like I've learned so much from your journey. Thank you for taking your time to be on this podcast.
Thank you for the invitation, Nadja. We always just so enjoy seeing you when we get to see you out and about. And so having the pleasure of getting to spend this little bit of time with you is lovely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nadja. I really appreciate you. What are you doing here?
Thank you so much for tuning into the Wake Up Protocol. If you like what you heard, share this episode with 3 people who need to hear this message. And if you want to go deeper, head to thewakeupprotocol.com and sign up for our email list. That's where we share behind the scenes insights, bonus resources, exclusive invites, and the kind of guidance we only send to our community. And if this is the last thing you hear from us, all we'd like to say is keep going, trust yourself, follow your heart. Until next time, have a safe and happy journey.